Imagine for a second that you're at the beach, the sun shining bright, waves crashing on the sand, and you decide to take a dip in the ocean. But instead of that salty taste that makes you wrinkle your nose, the water is ... sweet. Yes, sweet like a glass of tap water. What if the ocean, this giant covering over 70% of the planet, had never been salty? What if, since the beginning of time, it had been made of fresh, pure, crystal clear water? Today, we're diving headfirst into this crazy idea and exploring how a world like that will be completely different from what we know. Buckle up, because this journey will take us down unexpected paths, full of curiosities and possibilities that will make you rethink everything about planet Earth. So, let's get straight to the point. What would change if the oceans were freshwater? To start, we need to understand where this difference comes from. In our reality, the salt in the seas comes from billions of years of erosion, with rivers carrying minerals from rocks into the oceans, where they accumulate because the water evaporates and the salt stays behind. But in this imaginative scenario, something went wrong or right depending on your perspective. Maybe the rivers never carried so much salt, or perhaps Earth's chemical processes work differently, keeping the seas free of salinity. The exact reason doesn't matter. What matters is the result: a planet where the world's largest water reservoir is fresh. And man, that changes everything. I'm talking about ecosystems, climate, even the way humans would live. Let's imagine the consequences of this twist together. And I'll tell you right now, I'm as curious as you are to see where this takes us. Think of the ocean as Earth's beating heart. It regulates the climate, feeds food chains, and in our real story, it's salty enough to sustain incredible creatures like whales, corals, and fish that look like they're from a sci-fi movie. Now, take the salt out of the equation. What happens to that balance? I'm excited to figure this out with you, because seriously, the possibilities are endless. Let's start by looking at marine life, because that's where things get really interesting. Now, picture the ocean floor. In our reality, marine life evolved to deal with salinity. Fish, algae, corals, they all have internal systems that balance salt. But in a world where the ocean is fresh water, that adaptation never happens. Instead, we have an explosion of life, more like what we see in rivers and lakes. Imagine fish like trout and carp swimming in massive schools where we now see sharks and tuna. The crystal clear waters could host aquatic plants on a colossal scale: lily pads, the size of floating islands, or submerged forests of reeds swaying with the currents. I can't help but imagine diving into an ocean like this, with perfect visibility, seeing miles of aquatic vegetation instead of coral reefs. It'd be like an endless underwater garden. And marine mammals? Whales and dolphins would have evolved differently. Maybe their diets would shift to include more aquatic plants, or perhaps they wouldn't even exist as we know them, making way for giant versions of otters or beavers adapted to cross entire oceans. It's almost funny to think about a beaver the size of a bus navigating the Atlantic. But it's not just marine life that changes. The global climate would feel the impact too. Without salt, water density would be lower, messing up ocean currents like the Gulf Stream, which currently regulates the climate of Europe and North America. Without it, London might be a freezer year-round, while New York would face even hotter summers. I'm starting to see how such a simple change could turn the world upside down. Let's take it a step further and think about humanity. In our history, salt was one of the most valuable resources in antiquity, used to preserve food, as currency in some cultures, and even as a reason for wars. In a world with freshwater seas, that never happens. Without salt in the oceans, humans would have had to find other ways to preserve meat and fish, maybe investing more in smoking or fermentation. I picture ancient civilizations building massive ovens instead of salt pans, and global trade revolving around spices or wood instead of white crystals. And there's more. With fresh water in abundance, agriculture could explode in coastal areas. Cities like Lisbon or Tokyo, which in our reality depend on rivers or desalination, would have unlimited access to drinking water straight from the sea. That will completely reshape the map of great civilizations. By the way, if you're enjoying exploring this crazy idea with me, hit the like button to help me keep imagining these incredible scenarios. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. Now, back to our freshwater world, I keep wondering, what would sea exploration look like? In our history, ships faced storms and scurvy, but here with drinkable water everywhere, maritime travel would be much easier. I imagine Vikings sailing without fear of dying of thirst, or Columbus reaching America with a well-hydrated crew, maybe even colonizing faster. It's amazing how something as basic as freshwater could rewrite human history. But it wouldn't all be smooth sailing, or should I say, smooth freshwater sailing. Without salt, coastal ecosystems would be unrecognizable. Mangroves, which depend on the mix of salt and freshwater, might disappear, taking with them immense biodiversity. And storms? With an altered water cycle, we could have more intense hurricanes or torrential rains in unexpected places. I can't help but wonder what scientists in this world would say while studying such a different planet. Would they dream of a salty ocean the way we dream of a freshwater one? It's crazy to think about, but that's exactly why I love these ideas. They make us see the world with new eyes. Now that we've seen how marine life, climate, and even human history would change with freshwater seas, it's time to drop a bombshell on this story, something I didn't see coming until I started imagining deeper. What if, because of this fresh water in the oceans, Earth had never developed continents as we know them? Wait, let me explain. In our reality, the salt and minerals in the seas help shape Earth's crust over billions of years, influencing plate tectonics. But without that salinity, the ocean's chemical balance would be different, and geological processes could have taken a completely different turn. Imagine that instead of giant continents like Africa or Asia, the planet was covered in thousands of smaller islands, scattered like confetti in an endless freshwater sea. My jaw drops just thinking about it, a world without large landmasses, just archipelagos everywhere. Suddenly, everything we imagined before gains a new layer. Marine life wouldn't just be in the oceans, but would dominate these islands, with giant amphibians hopping between archipelagos and aquatic birds ruling the skies. Humans? Well, we would have become a civilization of sailors from the start. No land empires like Rome or China here. The great powers will be floating nations, with cities built on platforms or colossal boats. I can picture it. Fleets of wood and metal crossing the seas, trading fish, tropical fruits, and aquatic inventions, while the concept of borders simply wouldn't exist. It's like the whole planet will become a watery playground, and I'm loving every second of this idea. This twist changes everything, doesn't it? The climate will be even more chaotic, with winds and rain shaped by a sea that never stops moving between these islands. And human technology? Maybe we'd never have invented cars or trains. What for if there are no roads? Instead, we'd have solar-powered boats or even personal submarines since the Middle Ages. I can picture a Leonardo da Vinci sketching flying catamarans instead of bird-based flying machines. And culture. Stories would be about sea heroes, not knights in distant lands. Our entire way of living, dreaming, and fighting would be shaped by this fragmented, watery world. It's almost like we're in a sci-fi movie, but based on something as simple as fresh water. So, we've reached the end of this journey. A planet where the ocean is fresh water isn't just a chemical swap, it's a complete reinvention of Earth. From underwater life to scattered islands, from human navigators to floating cities, this scenario shows us how a small change can create a world we barely recognize. I loved exploring this with you, and now I can't stop wondering, what would it be like to live in a place like this? Would you love sailing between islands on a bamboo boat? Or do you prefer imagining your favorite city floating in the middle of the ocean? Tell me in the comments. I'm dying to know what you think. And seriously, how do you think the world would be if the seas were fresh water? Drop your idea below, who knows? It might be the next video.